Welcome to Let's Talk About It, the podcast where we talk about what's happening in the community, where the stories that are told about us are told by us. I'm Yvette Tello with Prensa Texas.
And I'm Jaclyn Tacoronte with JMT Media, and we are here to really get down to the nitty-gritty of Let's Talk About It. So we are extremely blessed and honored to be here with two amazing pioneers here in San Antonio, Texas, as well as the greater surrounding areas. Our amazing Commissioner, Tommy Calvert.
Thank you.
And we also have Bexar County District Attorney candidate, Mr. Shannon Locke. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor. Congratulations on this new show. This is what we need in San Antonio. So you are pioneering women. So thank you for leading the way to truth in the media in San Antonio. It's sure needed.
We are definitely, we're working it. We're working it. And so we're going to start off by talking about a couple of weeks back, we were in attendance at City Hall to really advocate and push for the voting to be moved from March to November, namely for a variety of reasons. One, we don't want voter suppression, right? But we also wanted folks to be able to have access and the opportunity to vote and have it not compete against other very historic and community-driven events such as Fiesta. I mean, that's a big scholarship fundraising event all year long. So, Yvette, can you talk a little bit about, you were there in the audience as we were advocating for that. And also, Tommy, you came in too. Mm-hmm. I mean, you really had some great things to say and to talk about what's going on.
Yeah, Yvette, you were.
Yeah, well, I was there, absolutely.
The history, yeah.
I was so impressed how many people came out to talk about it. And it's almost a no-brainer if you say, do you want to go vote or do you want to go to Fiesta?
Yeah. And Dolores Huerta came, which was
that was
a wonderful surprise. Yeah. I couldn't believe that.
It was like, is it the real Dolores Huerta?
Yeah. But that was
and it was
amazing.
So impressive. Yeah. And I feel like, I think there was only one person who said, no, let's not move it.
And Councilwoman Spears did a poll the week before. 70. This is District 9 Councilwoman Missy Spears, and I think it was 78% of the people in District 9 said move it to November.
Yeah, she was. That was a complete shift. I think from the audience perspective, I don't think a lot of people were expecting that. It was like the last inning. You're like, wait, what happened? And but you also spoke that afternoon, that afternoon. It was a long day for sure.
Yeah, no, it was important. The mayor had reached out, and anytime you can make democracy more easy for people to vote is important because there are so many elections, the way they roll out, this would give jurisdictions the opportunity to consolidate their elections because people in this city always are saying, I just voted for them, or I have to go again. And the less of that you have going on with people, especially nowadays being so busy, the better, right? And so, there were some concerns about school districts, but I think a lot of them are going to join in on the November or move theirs in conjunction to the other jurisdictions, college districts, and things like that. And I really think that'll help with voter fatigue. So many people are just like, I got to do this again. I got to do this again. And it's a tough environment.
So when I was in high school, so I understand that now high schools no longer have government required to be a government class. We used to have a half a semester of government.
What is it? Civic engagements?
I hate to hear that. I'm not in the legislature, so I'm not surprised, but that's terrible.
And then half a semester of economics, right? In order to graduate, you had to do a half and half. But you know what's so silly to me about that is that government law, policy, and economics, that's like what you have to know for the rest of your life.
Right. Yeah.
So why is it that, first of all, now I was thinking half a semester was silly, but now they pulled it out of school from what I understand.
Oh, that's an easy answer. I mean, we are living in an era where the Republicans really don't want people to be educated about how their government works because there is a minority of billionaires and oligarchs who are running everything. And as long as you are dumb and unaware of how it works, they can just puppet those politicians to whatever goodies that come out of the coffers of the government's possess, right? So that is why they're doing it. I mean, they don't want people to follow the money and pay attention.
So we've talked a little bit about following the money and policy, but Shannon, I mean, you've had 20 plus years in the courthouse, federal and state. Like, what are your thoughts on this?
Absolutely. So what real Democrats want is we want more people to participate in our democracy. That's really what we want. And so our ideas attract voters. And so the more people that we can get involved, the more likely it is that our ideas will be successful. Because when people hear our ideas, they like them. So that's basically what happens. And to Tommy's point, we have a growing pie, but a smaller minority of people is taking more and more of that pie. And so if they can keep us ignorant about economics, if they can keep us ignorant about government, they can keep us ignorant about our rights, then they're more likely to be able to push us around. And that's at the end of the day, that's probably the bigger story.
And that's what's happening right now. That is the culture and the climate of our time and of our city. And now we're talking about voter suppression. And when you talk about it, and we've seen a little bit in the paper, the Current did a wonderful job at covering some of that. And I've heard from certain people that have talked to the elections department, and they are very passionate about it as well. But it doesn't make sense if you don't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that's the idea. So today, if you could, Tommy, just break it down just a little bit,
Sure.
just so that we can understand it. Because we don't know what it means. Like voter suppression, you hear that, it's like, oh, they're not letting me vote.
So high level, there were only two private sector vendors for a voter registration system that you could use as a jurisdiction in Texas. Okay, so a county, a city, etc. One of those entities, a California-based company, had gone belly up. So it left us with one private sector vendor. And then the Secretary of State, who administers elections for the state, they have a system, but it's largely been used for rural, smaller counties. It has a slow uptake. It's got less memory and all those kinds of things. So traditionally, most of your big counties have not used the state system. So fast forward, we had that November election where Project Marvel and the state constitutional amendments were on. And because we were on the state system, we had a backlog of like 77,000 people's voter registrations. Now, just think about that. That's a lot of votes that can change a statewide election, particularly as it's very close in some of these national, we often are, the prevailing wisdom of politics is that we're a 50-50, almost 50-50 country. I don't think that's true anymore. I think that the pendulum is coming much more towards Democrats. That worries some of the Republicans at the state level. And their goal is always to shave off some votes so that they can maintain political and financial power, because people often miss that the contracts, the billions and billions of dollars in contracts, wind their way into campaign contributions in the campaign coffers of Governor Abbott and his cronies. And as a result, it not only proliferates Texas politics, but it also proliferates the national politics and the Trumpism that's going on. So Texas is a very important location for voting. That's unfortunately why they sold out to the Trump administration's DOJ, and they sent our 18 plus million voter registration records to the Department of Justice. What's going to happen, and I'll come back to the local thing in a second, what's going to happen is the Department of Justice, the Trump Justice Department, is going to end up shaving off some people and saying, Ms. Tello, you happen to be illegal. Or Mr. Calvert, you committed some sort of felony and you are not supposed to be, even though you are legal, and even though I didn't commit a felony, you got a name, that matches somebody, and oops, there's a mistake, and oops, you wind up at the poll, and maybe you got to go to work, and you can't fix it. The burden becomes on you and me to get that fixed, right? So that's where it's important that these private sector vendors are able to, help us as much as we can in these kinds of shenanigans. So, early on, I found it very strange that, there was the folks in the DA's office were saying that we didn't need to do the VR systems because it was too expensive. And I thought, that is way outside of the lane of a district attorney's office to advise the court, which is in charge of financial matters, about the budgetary uses of the county. Fast forward to September, the court does pass VR systems as a private sector vendor. At that time, the direction of the court was to look at other counties that have done this and their contracts, because we needed to hurry this up.
Sure. Yeah. Don't reinvent the wheel.
We didn't need to reinvent the wheel
El Paso,
because the state has a cooperative buying ability that we are part of in the Bexar County called a Texas Buy Board. And that allows you to piggyback off of the contracts that have already been written and negotiated.
Like
and the
an
price.
approved vendor. It's like an approved vendor.
And it's beyond that.
Right,
It's
yeah.
approved at a certain price with certain contractual conditions, right?
No
So
brainer.
when you start to mess around with the contract in the way that our local DA's office did, that puts the whole thing in jeopardy because you negotiate conditions at a certain price. If you start saying it's a cloud-based system,
You don't get the
Yeah.
full.
then they've got to
premium.
rewrite programming to become a cloud-based system. And that's not what is negotiated at that price, right?
Is that what happened?
Yeah. And then some. I mean, I'm
Right,
in the
because we
interest
were
of
just
time.
trying to
Yeah.
save some money, maybe.
Well,
Or
these things have, as I said, a set price. The county had already put into the budget over $1 million for Vote Tech. We've been doing this for decades.
So I have one question
Sure.
when it comes to that.
Mhm.
So because it was during, I think I read something where Commissioner's Court, everybody approved. I think there was only one person who
Commissioner
did it.
Moody didn't.
So
They wanted to use the state system.
right, and maybe he didn't quite understand how it worked and why he wanted that, but wanted to know why then. Okay, and now the DA said no, we're going to order Teams, right, versus the VR.
Well, he didn't say that. He said that the county manager, the IT department, and the DA said they had to do staff due diligence. So then the IT department was blamed for some of the delay in terms of their computer check of the congruency with our systems. I'm not at liberty to tell you what I talked about in executive session. What I can say is that I think the public should be concerned about whether there were real conversations between our IT department and this vendor.
Good. I mean, and we do need to know that.
So, Shannon, I mean, as you're running for Bexar County District Attorney for that seat and that role, we've talked about this. Can you kind of express your thoughts and feelings on this particular situation? Because this is clearly voter suppression. This is, I mean, on a business professional level, MWBE contracts is a big deal, near and dear to my heart, supporting advocacy and legislation. But from the DA standpoint, can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So what you're concerned about, or what I would be concerned about, is clearly you have a party, the Republican Party, and they have adopted Project 2025. One of the clear aims of Project 2025 is to make sure that people don't get registered to vote. And so you need to make absolutely sure, as the district attorney, that as a Democratic district attorney, that you're enfranchising as many people as you possibly can. And so that has to be the priority. And so what I would task my civil division chief with would be, look, we need to make sure every decision that we make is enfranchising, getting people the right to vote and making that as easy as possible. Because that's absolutely what a Democratic district attorney should be doing. And so the concern that I would have is that if you have somebody that is thwarting that, then maybe they have a political agenda that they're enacting that would be contrary to getting as many people registered and on the voting rolls as quickly as possible.
So one question real quick, Shannon.
Yeah.
You when you say Democratic DA, you're talking about you're not saying that you're a voting Democrat, you're just saying democracy.
Well, I'm saying well, party affiliated with a Democratic district attorney is somebody who should be encouraging people, but also somebody who wants a democratic
democracy,
a strong democracy,
right.
a strong
because the votes for Republicans and Democrats are just as important,
yes.
right? And the idea is it's about all voters.
Yes.
And I just want to make that really, really clear that everybody understand that, because so now, Commissioner, because we don't understand what happens in Commissioner's Court or City Council or who's responsible for what. But clearly the Commissioner's Court, it was voted. It was supposed to be the VR system. The fact that did not happen and something else was not compatible to the system we have now, we are now backlogged.
They just cleared up about 6,000, right? and I think you
Hold on, can I stop? What do you mean how did we go from backlog to all of a sudden things are okay?
Well, they did hire temporary workers.
Okay.
But that is a unfunded mandate. The fact that we had to pay people out of the Bexar County budget for what the state of Texas should have done doing it right, because the state of Texas's system was only uploading about 8 voter registrations, whereas before it would be about 24 to 30 an hour. I think we have to be very careful, though, about being lulled to sleep. I think there are some in the Project 2025 world, those folks who do not want people to get registered to vote, who want to lull to mow down the backlog so that, well, they say, well, we got through it.
It's not that.
You think we can use the
public
state system?
from a media public perception standpoint, it comes off as, oh, we got a problem. We have a solution in 24 hours, and you're like, how did that happen? We still have the pothole from 20 years ago.
It's a manpower issue, but here's part of the bigger picture. We had, with those 70,000 voter registrations, we had people who were very strained at the elections department, having to work weekends, having to work really long hours. I mean, I can't fault the elections administrator for doing that, because I would have done the same thing, to be honest with you. It would have been, I'm sorry, but we've got to get people in the system.
But it's the process.
And but there were people who quit. There were people who quit because of the work.
It doesn't have to be that way, though.
No, it doesn't. I mean,
that's what I'm asking.
It's not only that it's slowed down at the Texas Secretary of State's team system, but the people who get registered to vote at DPS, when you go get your driver's license, the elections department couldn't even see certain screens to enter people. It was completely dysfunctional, right? So you can't tell me that that's just so coincidental. Now let me just make something clear. We've always said that the Texas team system was kind of for the rural, smaller counties, but guess what's happening as we speak? The rural counties are saying, hey, that system in state is so messed up and jacked up. We want VR.
Yep.
So when the local message machine of the Project 2025 people tries to get you into complacency that we can use the state system, be advised, that's not what the rural counties are saying. They're saying, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because VR Systems has said they do one county at a time for quality's sake. So if we wait, we might become behind these other smaller counties, and we've got a lot more data and a lot more millions of people to work with, right? So we have to stay on this until it gets passed.
So in layman's terms, for me to understand, it means that not everybody's vote counts.
Well, there's a lot of things that are happening with these systems. The first thing is that if you register and your registration is not processed, then of course, yes, that means that you cannot be enfranchised to vote. Okay,
is that legal?
I don't believe it is. I don't believe it is. And I think that is a whole nother conversation for our civil rights organizations who could look at lawsuits. Even our district attorney's office could look at lawsuits to hold the state accountable to be compliant with the law that the state passed by the legislature.
So, Shannon, do you think that would be something that any DA would actually do, though?
Well, I don't know that any DA, but I think the right DA would do it. And so I think that, that's...
Because it's scary. That's a really big step, but I can't even believe that it's happening.
This is not a drill. This is fascism on the march.
Yeah, and we have to be afraid of it. And I would be definitely afraid of it, because you would have to come up against a very big machine.
It's very difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. And it would be a heavy lift. But it's certainly something. So you have to have a district attorney that really believes, like, we want 100% voter participation. We want 100% voter registration. Obviously, that's ideal, but you want to do everything you can to push to get more people involved in the process. Frankly, because we know that when our ideas are tested by the people, those ideas are successful. And so that's the goal, is that you want a district attorney who is absolutely committed to getting as many people involved in voting and in the democracy and all of those things.
How about understanding, though? Yeah. How about a district attorney that understands? And I don't fault somebody who didn't, because, again, like I said at the beginning, we were not educated on basic government policy.
Well, let me chime in there, and I'm going to let him answer.
Absolutely.
There are more proactive things that elections departments and electeds in general can do to empower people, and there are proactive things to provide civic education that some elections officials do. But certainly it can be a passion of a district attorney to also make sure that people do understand. I mean, I agree with Shannon. Most of us in the Democratic Party, and not all of us,
That's true.
most of us want a lot of people to vote.
Yeah.
Most of us want as many people and may the chips. And believe me, I don't just want Democrats to vote. I want Republicans to vote. I want independents. I want Green Party. I want the socialists. I want every party to be able to have their voice heard in the election process. But some people want to use the money of the government to enrich big business billionaires and oligarchs so that the treasury belongs not to the people, but to the powerful.
Well, that's why we have so many parties, huh?
Yeah.
So we can divide, right? And not unite.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so you have to be secure in your ideas. And that's what Commissioner Calvert say. I mean, he's secure in his ideas, so he's fine with as many people voting as possible. I'm secure in my ideas, so I want lots of people to vote and lots of people to hear the ideas. So that's absolutely important. But additionally, what you have to have as the district attorney is you have to have a clear mandate to your people and say, listen, we're not going to be obstructionists. We're not going to slow things down. We really want to make it as easy as possible for people to register and for people to vote and get as many people on the rolls as possible. And that's your clear mandate. And when you give that clear mandate, then your civil division chief, your assistant district attorneys know what they're supposed to do to make that happen.
Let me also make one point for you all as those who are amplifying the public view of this whole voting thing. Let's be clear. This slowdown of the VR contract was an attack on democracy and the voting system. Mm-hmm. So what you have to understand is that this was planned by some political forces in the state of Texas, okay? From the Capitol probably to the Washington, D.C. So if I'm a watchdog organization, I say San Antonio, like Tarrant County, needs to be under a heavier scrutiny of watch. Just like we had the voting, the voting rights bill had certain southern states who were, because of histories of discrimination and voting manipulation, had to be pre-cleared for their decisions. We once again, we don't have that same infrastructure, but we do have civic groups, whether it's ACLU, Common Cause, LULAC, MALBEF, NAACP, Disability Rights. All of these coalition of organizations need to come together to organize monitors on the election system. So that is a call to action, I think, for those civil rights organizations that we cannot just rely upon the elected officials to do this. It's just like the people in Minnesota going and to the streets and protesting. It has to be a combination of all of civic society watching this closely.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, that actually takes me into kind of our next topic, because people are watching. I hate to use the word finally, but finally, I mean, as we speak, by the time this is airing, whether it's on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, we would have already attended the Dilley rally. We would have already attended Congressman Mr. Castro's rally. And so can we talk about what people... It's not a popular topic to talk about ICE.
Yeah.
Because I think in general, the masses assume when you talk about ICE, that means, oh, you don't want public safety. Mm-hmm. When in actuality, democracy, that's not it at all. And so, Shannon, I'm going to kick it off to you because of all 8, 10, 20 district attorney candidates, you're actually the only one that has come forward to really talk about ICE, really talk about the penal code, really talk about the statutory limitations and what can be done, even though somebody may not want to do the work. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it's always our hope that everybody always follows the law. But really, public safety depends on making sure that you don't have anybody who's above the law, especially when when the people that might be above the law have a whole lot of governmental power. So what you have to do, and what we would do as the district attorney, is we would, if there are violations of the penal code committed by ICE agents, we would prosecute those people. We would investigate them and prosecute them. And there's about 10 district attorneys across the country that have signed up. There's more that are coming every day.
You hear that, Democrats?
Yeah, I know.
I mean, but maybe you should name some, like Philly.
Yeah, it's Krasner. It's Jose Garcia.
Who's I think in Austin. Right?
He's in Austin, and so it's in Texas. It's in Minnesota. It's in exactly.
Wake up,
exactly. And it was.
I love you.
Having been to the debates, they started off. They said, "Well, you can never do this," and then they said, "Well, it's a waste of resources." And so they're slowly moving in our direction. But the reality is that this is how it happens, is that a police officer, a federal agent, is tasked with a specific duty to investigate crime. And when they commit crime, they're stepping outside of that duty. Okay, so they're not supposed to, for instance, a raid that just arrests everybody in a park. That's not legal, okay, because they have to have a specific target and say, okay, this person is removable for this reason so we can arrest them. They can't just arrest everybody. Okay.
But I read this week that they actually can, and now we're not even talking about licensed police officers, former law enforcement. They kind of, it's not an official bounty hunter, but that's kind of what they're contracted people that can go out and just arrest.
I think what you're referring to, Yvette, is ICE is making up a rule that another Customs and Bureau or ICE person can sign some sort of non-enforceable.
You don't have to sign
warrant.
anything.
That's not constitutional.
Right.
Is it?
Not constitutional.
So you might want to explain that.
It's allowed, isn't it? I mean, I think that's what.
It's not. Okay. So
Well, it's not legal. It's not supposed to be happening, but it is.
It is happening. Yes, and so the district attorney can then prosecute those people if they commit a crime because they're not tasked with committing crime. Okay. So if they, for instance, do a sweep and they begin arresting everybody in a park, unless they have reasonable suspicion to detain and probable cause to arrest, they can't do that. So what we can do as the district attorney's office is we can investigate those folks. We can hold them accountable, take their evidence to the grand jury. Once the evidence is at the grand jury, if they decide there's probable cause that an ICE agent committed a crime, then a warrant goes out for the ICE agent's arrest. And once that happens, the government can decide whether or not they're going to assert federal immunity or not.
And let me give for the audience who may not have gone to law school or have a civic education because we're cutting it from the schools. The proper procedure is a judge's warrant.
Yes, right.
So you want to explain a little bit more about what the proper way America's supposed to work under the Constitution?
There's a difference between an administrative warrant and a judicial warrant.
Right.
And so a judicial warrant is when a police officer goes to a judge and they swear out an affidavit about a place that is supposed to be searched or a person that is supposed to be seized, and then the judge signs that. An administrative warrant is totally different, and it has less effect. But they can say, I've got this administrative warrant, and it's a way to trick people into then complying. And so
And so what are their rights under an administrative warrant?
So an administrative warrant, they can demand, or they can essentially demand that you get a judicial warrant is certainly one of the rights.
Right.
And you can certainly... you don't have to open the door. You can refuse to open the door. You can assert your right to be free of an unlawful search and seizure for an administrative warrant.
So let me, if you don't mind, I just want to give some really important high-level history because some of you may not know. My work was in global human rights before I became a commissioner. I used to run the first anti-human trafficking organization in the United States in Boston, the American Anti-Slavery Group. I actually helped write the law that Ghislaine Maxwell was imprisoned on. I wrote in the 20-year minimum for children being sexually exploited in human trafficking.
Thank you.
Well, it was an honor. I just figured if I was in the same circumstance, I'd want somebody to do it for me, right?
Yeah.
So what we're witnessing in this country is what all dictators do, whether it's Russia or whether it's Nazi Germany. What they do is they say, let's put the border everywhere. Let's make the border in different cities all over the country. And let's have illegal acts of the secret militia, ICE, like the SS or others. Let's keep them doing illegal acts without accountability from a DA or a federal authority so that you get used to them doing illegal activity. And once we take all of the Latinos, then we go after the political people you don't like, or we go after whoever we don't like.
Troublemakers.
Okay? So it's an intentional historical fact that's not Tommy Calvert studied. It's Yale University professor Timothy Snyder on tyranny, the loss of freedom, all these documented historical realities that we are actually walking through. And so it demands the kind of conversation that Shannon has brought to the Bexar County District Attorney's race to say, just like the Philly District Attorney is saying, you will not get away with this. We will get you. We will prosecute you. We will be ready when the time comes. Let me give you an example that I worked on. For decades, as a head of the American Anti-Slavery Group, we worked on a dictator named Omar al-Bashir, and we documented the liability. I mean, even as a college student, I was telling my university professor, drop stock, invested in Sudan and this dictatorship because the liability is going to come to him eventually. It was my first campaign in 1999. And guess where he is going this year? To The Hague, to the International Criminal Court. His ass is being prosecuted today. It took us 26 years, but we got him. Yeah. And let that be a lesson to ICE.
Yeah. So my thing is this now, because we've seen where people are capturing on their cameras, because they don't have to have any type of body cams. There's no accountability of what happens. We heard last week about the nurse that was murdered because a woman was being beaten on the floor and he just...
Alex Preddy.
And felt horrible. I know the parents came up speaking like they tried to, what the media was portraying, like that's your fault for getting involved in something that you shouldn't have been involved in. But how is humanity not something that we're supposed to be involved in?
But he was also a nurse. He had a Hippocratic oath. He saw a woman being pushed on the ice and slipping. He went to help her up. He went to protect her. He, in essence, was defensively shielding her and trying to get her. And he was filming.
Legal. It's legal.
He also has a legal right to bear arms, which Second Amendment groups have said. He had a permit as well. And
a cell phone in his hand.
You think about Kyle Rittenhouse, who had a AR-15 in a protest, and he was given a hero's welcome by whether it was Turning Point USA or any number of other right-wing groups. All of a sudden, so what that is really about is white supremacy. It's okay for white people to bear arms, but it's not okay for those who fight white supremacy to bear arms. And that's what you're watching in that conversation.
That's exactly right.
And I think...
to Commissioner Calvert's point, the reaction to people that fight against white supremacy is, oh, you're crazy, right? Oh, you can't do that, right? You can't prosecute ICE agents. That's crazy, right? It's not crazy. It's actually absolutely... And it is absolutely essential. We have to do it because we've got to draw the line.
Absolutely. So if somebody witnessed something and this is the agent and I'm willing to say this was wrong.
Yeah.
What do I do? I wouldn't even know the first place because obviously you can't call the police and you don't want to put a target on your own back. What do? How do you do this?
You could call the police.
Yeah, and so that's one of the reasons I think it's important for the district attorney's office to be able to independently investigate cases. So I think there is that kind of nervousness right now that exists, especially in our immigrant communities, where they are concerned about if they call the police, what will happen. And so that's one of the reasons that I've been advocating for the district attorney's office to initiate these investigations. And again, my opponents are all saying that you can't do that. The Texas statutes are very clear that the district attorney's office can absolutely initiate investigations. Now, if it comes from law enforcement, that's preferable. But in circumstances like you're describing, Yvette, where people are like, well, I don't want to call the police, I'm not sure what's going to happen, we can certainly go to the district attorney's office and we can begin the investigation there. And that's one of the reasons the statute is there in case there is a police organization that isn't willing to investigate.
To get involved. And I do want to say that for as far as I know, SAPD and Bexar County Sheriff, they're in an outrage about what's going on as well. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I'm not saying that you cannot go to the police. I'm just saying that some people are not comfortable doing that. And that's the only reason I'm bringing that up. The other thing I want to stress is that I know for a fact that we do believe in an immigration system, and that's why it's there. And that's not what we're at this table saying, that nobody should be allowed. We're just saying that the way it's being handled is wrong, because there is a process to get into the country. I also want to share one thing with you guys as a media piece. I remember I went to the inauguration when President Biden was elected after the January 6th And nobody was allowed to be there. There was about 3, maybe 4. I think it was 3. It was us, and it was CNN International, and I think it was Univision. And we were the only 3 media pieces there. So La Prensa was essentially giving all the feedback here to the local television stations. And I found it so interesting because I was physically there and saw. So I'd watch the TV screen, and it was what you were seeing, but it wasn't like that. And it was like everybody was so afraid for us. And it was a group of journalists that I took with us, young. It was about 5 of us. And it was not what you saw, but you saw it. And so there's always a narrative that they want us to believe. And and there's, so it's not always what you see on TV, right? It's a production.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's interesting. So speaking of production, last week at City Hall, Mayor Jones and our city council allowed for public comment, and just arrived. I think everybody in general, they assumed that it was going to be business as usual. You go, you can speak, you sign up. And as soon as you arrive to City Hall, the steps, right, you have protesters outside. And then inside you have drums. And I'm Native American, I'm Apache. And it was very emotional sitting there. Shannon and I, we were there. Also, Judge Rosie, Speedland Gonzalez was there. And we were there for 6 to 8 hours sitting there. And as you're hearing people's responses to everything happening with ICE, what's happening in the community, it was a resounding sadness. As much as everyone was so up in arms to express themselves as they should, there was also a level of sadness of just like, wow, this is where we're at. Yeah. Whether you're Republican, Democrat, indifferent, it didn't even matter. You're like, this is what's happening. Grown adults are having these very tough, difficult decisions, and people just want what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong.
There's a lot of heartbreak in the community. Like having gone out, and I it's probably been one of the things that took me most by surprise is that there's a lot of people that are just, we believed in this civic structure, we believed in the civic framework and the fabric that united us, and it's being torn apart for what? For cruelty. And we I think pride ourselves in our community for being as good and decent people, and we see our government, which we have trusted for so long, do cruel things in our name, and I think people are absolutely heartbroken. And I think that it's just it is one of the things that has struck me is that people are angry. They are angry, and they are angry that they have been betrayed. Is really what that comes down to. In my experience.
Yeah, and they're also angry on both sides, though.
Yeah.
Because I know I have a lot of readers that will respond and say, get rid of these immigrants. They're criminals, right? And they're rapists, and look what they've done, and they murdered somebody, and they've done, and they do. They really highlight these things, and I don't, by all means, say that they're wrong in that sense. But they should have been flagged, because I will say I did see there was somebody that did, like, he killed, actually it was a friend of mine from high school, and he was out on bond like the 2nd or 3rd time, right? And so obviously our system is broken in that sense, and I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but I think I did read like several studies that there's less crime in immigrant societies and neighborhoods versus where there's not so many immigrants, because they're here, they're very grateful for being here, they're hard workers, and they don't want to go back home, and they're very grateful for the country we live in. I had a friend of mine who told me, like, she used to pay her taxes, like it was income tax time, and she would pay thousands of dollars. I'm like, what are you doing? You haven't even written off anything, right? She's like, no, I don't want to write anything off. Like, you don't understand, like, we have to pay taxes because it's so, you don't have the blessing of having running water. They're like, we have to boil our water, and they tell them about the water that they do have access to is yellow. Their laundry. I mean, this was
one thing I will say is, Yvette, we can't be fooled about the real thing that's going on. Mm-hmm. And the Attorney General of the United States actually said it when the Governor Walz of Minnesota, and the Attorney General were having conversations to show you it's really not about immigration. Immigration is being pimped out as the issue, the carrot and the stick. Look over here. Mm-hmm. What she said was, well, if you will give us your state voter registration list, we'll leave Minneapolis. Okay? So let's not let the weapon of mass distraction, the goal for them is staying in power, enriching themselves and their friends, and using the government to do so. And it's a distraction from the Epstein files, which are going to come out. And I think
we stopped talking about that already.
Well, that's why I brought it back.
Yeah, that's right.
For this election year, I'm going to have Epstein files at the top of my tongue
Oh, my
to
goodness.
keep you focused.
Yeah. And so both of you, y'all discussed how these issues, and they're not very popular, right, with the establishment. So how do you feel about that? Sometimes I'm just...
That's so
we're dealt a hand. We're dealt a hand, and it's up to us to reframe. And I think that from my perspective, we have a fight in the country over those who believe that in order for you to get ahead, you have to have your foot on someone else's neck. And those of us who believe that you don't have to do that, that we actually can all share resources and harmony and peace and prosperity, and that I want what's great for you and you and you, and that I'm not going to hold you down so I can have mine.
Yeah.
But that is the twisted mentality, the twisted mind of white supremacists. And Biden warned us when he was president. He came out with a briefing and he said the greatest threat to America is the threat of white supremacy. A pretty bold statement. And that's why he ran. He said, I'm running for the soul of America's at stake. So it's a spiritual reckoning that we are grappling with. I mean, some of us know very clearly where we stand. Some of us know very clearly what will win. And I will say the fascist takeover, the dictatorship will not happen. It will not happen. And the reason I know that is the polling data and the elections that have happened. We've seen Democrats win in Republican districts all over the place. Yeah. We wouldn't have the VR system blockade if they weren't worried about what's about to happen in November. Yeah. And I believe there are people in our military who swear the oath of the Constitution. And I just think there are too many of us. The group that is in the fascist group is a 20% of the population, maybe. Okay. So we have to go through this for people to see and to learn. I've had to sharpen my old human rights talks.
Thank you, Jesus.
And I'm even going to go through additional training to educate people about the history of how dictators do this, because Trump is a poor student of Lenin. Bannon, his campaign manager, in the Conservative Political Action Committee meeting in 2017 said who Trump and those guys are. He said, we are deconstructionist Leninists. You're like, Tommy, what the hell are you talking about, right? What the hell? I ain't never heard of that. Uh-huh. Well, what that is they looked at Lenin in Russia. And Lenin came in under Russia First. Y'all heard this America First theme? Mm-hmm. Well, he borrowed it from Lenin, Russia First. He came in saying, I'm fighting for the workers. I want to make sure our people aren't taking your jobs. We're going to have Russians first, like the white man first and America first, right? We're going to come in, and what they did is they came in under one political party, and they flipped it and switched it, and they destroyed it and became a dictatorship. And so they're saying with the deconstructionist part, we are anarchists. We're anarchists. We want to tear. He said this. This is Bannon. He said, we want to tear down the entire administrative state. What do you think is happening?
Yeah. It's happening.
Everything is being torn down.
Yeah.
You can see it. So, it's unpopular. It's divisive. And that's actually the silver lining, is that more Americans we're not going to be Nazi Germany. We are not. Yeah. We have the streets, the protests, the elections to prove Pharaoh Abbott and Pharaoh Trump will not win. So be encouraged. We've got to fight, and we got a lot of lessons.
It's interesting you say that, because when we were prepping for this talk, Yvette had asked me, what made you get involved in politics? And I said, oh, easy. Somebody pissed me off as a business owner. I said, I never wanted, because I grew up, went to Southwest High School, UTSA, And I was always taught Democrats do for the poor, Republicans do for the rich. But if you don't have money, you don't get to play the game. So I just never got involved. And it was until I was in New York for many years with my business, I had to understand what MWBE contracts are and the impact and the significance of when you don't have access, when you do have accessibility, which is going to be another episode, which we'll talk about because City Council, we're coming right back to y'all. City Council.
That's what it's all about. That's what this Trumpism is all about.
That's exactly
the
it.
Contracts.
And
so
so
too many Democrats don't understand that.
That's exactly it. And so that just added fuel to my fire. And then I got to learn through Judge Rosie that we both attended the Yale Campaign School, both Texas, San Antonio women representing the great state of Texas. But that just goes to show that silver lining, that ambition, and that courage to stick up, which is very hard. But I want to also commend you, Shannon. I mean, since we're being very transparent and direct, I've had people pull me aside in parking lots and garages, which is really scary, so don't do that. And I'm 5'11", so I can hold my own. But they're like, how are you working with a white man? That's the conversation. And I'm like, out of all the things that we could talk about, I'm like,
try it. How about you try it? You might like it.
And I'm like, he's here for us, for our community, for our humanity. Yeah. And so it takes a lot of courage to really put your best foot forward to support your community. And, you've been doing it for decades. You posted recently on your Facebook page a photo of you at, I think it was the first MLK March. I saw you in your little
14.
suit. Yeah.
Wasn't the first one, but I was
with your little suit. I loved it.
Yeah.
And what I also loved was that your father, Mr. Tommy Calvert Sr. was standing there proud right next to you. And I thought to myself, I can't wait for my children to stand right next to me. So I just want to commend you and say I wasn't here when you were growing up as a young child, but as a young man, I'm very proud to sit next to you.
Oh, it's an honor. Sure. It's been a tough road in San Antonio. It's not easy to do what my father and I have done. It's a lonely place. A lot of people don't get it. You are persecuted. We lose money. I have my, tires have nails in them 2-3 times a year. But we've got to honor our commitment to each other. Yeah. And I don't wear it on my sleeve, but it's out of a faith tradition to help people.
I love that. Yeah. I love that.
Well, I think the humanity part is the most important part, Commissioner. I think it's very difficult. It's very easy for us to keep our heads down because that's what they taught us. My mom and my dad, mother was brought up in Stonewall, Texas. So her adopted parents were the nannies. The nanny was for Lyndon B. Johnson, President Lyndon B. Johnson. Oh, wow. So mom grew up very different, right out in the country. And then her adopted mother died. And then she came over here as she met dad. So dad grew up in the projects. And it was where the police would beat you because you were out after 7. Do you want a beating or do you want to go to juvenile? So he didn't want
sundown town.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, and my dad took the beating, so my grandma didn't have to be involved in that. So he had an issue with police officers. He was, during the riots, he was in Chicago, and that was a terrible place to be at that time. He was a migrant worker. So dad was against everything and you keep your mouth shut. Mother didn't understand why you would keep your mouth shut, right? Yeah. So mother used to say, you threaten them with the media. You tell them you're going to call the media. So
that's true. But when systems fail, silence hurts all of us.
That's true.
And so that's why I also commend you, Yvette, for La Prensa being around for so many years and now jumping into the digital age. But more than that, jumping in 10 toes down of here's what we're going to talk about.
And this conversation hasn't happened on any other media social that I'm aware of, right?
Yeah. And I think it's so surprising though, because this is such an easy topic to talk about, whether you're on one side or the other, but it should be talked about. We need to talk about it. Mm-hmm. And I know I have the column called Let's Talk About It in our paper, and I love it. And it started with the chancla, the reign of the chancla. And, so we have some fun stuff and then we have some other stuff, right? And it's uncomfortable conversations to have, but we have to have them. It's time. There was a time, like I said, Dad was taught, he was told, he went to high school, they said, you're a good kid, Ralph. If you just sit in the back and keep your head down, you'll be okay. Mm. And, my grandparents were divorced and my grandma was a housewife. She did laundry, to make ends meet. And that was what it was. And mother was like, no, you don't keep your mouth shut. You better say. So she had me talking since I was in 4th grade, right? I used to wear a shirt that said Chicana power. didn't even know what it meant. I wore it, and it did something because people look at me, so I knew it meant something. So it had a lot of direction in the way that I think. But I have seen that it's not popular to speak, and it is lonely at the top. And when you say things that are not very popular, but they do talk about it. This is the thing. When we're behind closed doors.
Yeah,
okay?
We're talking.
Yeah.
But this is a platform that we can use, that we can talk about. And then somebody said something really, really insightful for me, because I was like, we need to talk about it. Let's talk about it. And somebody said, I really enjoy your column. I'm like, but I don't say anything, right? Because I want to hear the comments. So I put it on social media so they can comment. And then she's like, I didn't know what to say. But it was very thought-provoking. And then I said, you know what? I'm thinking, let's talk about it, but they actually have to think about it because we're not bringing it to the attention. And again, the column's about there's no wrong or right answers, and it's the same thing with the podcast. Like when I ask you the questions that I ask you, it's because you guys, you know the law, you know policy. A lot of people that I know of in city council, even they don't quite know policy, because I've had conversations. We've attended city hall meetings that don't even make sense. Like, what are they saying? Like, this is okay? They approve this? This doesn't make any sense.
I'm trying not to laugh.
It's true story. That's
because
why.
I'm like, come on, man, read the notes. What is happening?
Let me say.
I'm like, did y'all read the agenda today?
So, in addition to being, a board member of Prensa, but also starting San Antonio Community Radio, when I started KROV, San Antonio Community Radio, 18 years ago, I was in the Texas Association of Broadcasters convention in Austin. And, don't take what I'm saying on white supremacy as the wrong way. I mean, obviously, everybody should be against white supremacy. So don't take this as singling anybody out. But it was actually the most white male. It was just where all the owners are of the broadcast institutions, TV and radio. It was the most white male room I've ever been in. There weren't women. There were very little Latinos. I think we were the only black ones there. Okay.
Oh, fast forward. We just went to the Texas Hall of Fame for our dear friend Hot Henrietta.
Oh, love her. She worked for KROB.
Yep. And so we were there, and we were the only Latina women. I was like, where?
She was the only woman being honored.
So my point in telling you that
it's the same.
Is that the lack of conversation is also by design, because the narrative that the oligarchs want to put forward for us to hear or not hear. It's often not what they print and write about. It's what they leave out that you got to follow. What they don't empower you with that you got to follow. Right. And so this is an important first inaugural platform that you must continue, because if you don't, there's nobody else that's going to do it. So keep it up.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. It's an honor. It really is. And just to give a little background about La Prensa is the oldest bilingual newspaper in the United States. Started in 1913 during the Mexican Revolution.
Amazing.
And it was when they didn't have a voice, so they'd send it over here and we print it over here. And
Yes,
tell that story. So
I love it.
we need to continue to do that. Tell our stories. But there's been such a history of our people that were never told, right?
That's right.
And even like the Indians. And,
That's right.
And everything that we were taught, right? So now it is our time, and this is the platform. And I thank y'all both so much for being here and helping us do this, because I know that this isn't a popular conversation, and the things that y'all have to say, I hope y'all understand that we're not trying to put y'all on the spot. And I have to say, though, I do love Republicans. So my best friends are Republicans, and I love white people. My best friends are white. I'm so sorry. My best friend, they talk about my white clique.
I know.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
This isn't about politics. This is about knowing that your vote counts.
When systems fail, silence helps no one.
Voters deserve better, and they're demanding it now.
Transparency and accountability protect democracy.
This is La Prensa Texas, powered by JMT Media.